Here's another one. You go, is it true that Klaus Schwab and the WEF have penetrated over half of the Canadian cabinet? Hashtag true WEF puppet. Hashtag Trudeau sold out Canada. Those are good hashtags. Another ratio, 9,500. So just so you know, Klaus Schwab's, he is a puppet of the WEF. He was their young global leaders. And do you want to see how I know this? Because here's Klaus Schwab.
And I have to say, when I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the world.
What?
Oh, just
but,
wait for it.
What we are very proud of now, the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are for our actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
And that's true.
Well, you don't got to put on robes and go hide in an island.
Half of his cabinet. Half
penetrated.
They've penetrated Justin Trudeau and his cabinet.
They're a wonderful young leader who will be penetrated.
So again, this is the world order. It seems like the WEF and this kind of cabal of capitalists seem to be running every government.
Do you know what's interesting, Jimmy? You played it this time, and now I didn't pick up on it the first time, but I knew nothing of Brazil. He almost slipped up and said Brazil, and I don't know when this was. But it was definitely before Lula, so he might have been ahead of his prediction by claiming hold of Brazil with the election of Lula. But I think this was before anyhow. But he said for a second, it's like Brazil or Argentina, but he has penetrated the Justin Trudeau cabinet.
So it's right out in the open. I can't get over it. Like, he just says it. We've penetrated their cabinets. We've got the young global leader, Justin Trudeau. We've got him.
And he's the front man of this thing.
This guy looks like that. He looks and sounds like Dr. Evil, because he is. And he's talking. He's just on camera with a microphone, talking about how they have infiltrated all the global governments.
Jimmy, but you still have people who believe that Trump colluded with Russia. You still have people that believe it's safe and effective. You still have people that believe it prevents transmission. And I mean, there's Mark Twain. It's easier to fool people than it is to convince them they've been fooled. And this is all like, I remember discovering Agenda 2030, the Great Reset, and I thought it was too much. And then I see it as a PDF. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Even though they said that was an opinion piece, it wasn't a policy. And I have trouble accepting it. I can only imagine how the people who just want to work their jobs, they just want, peace and quiet. This would be too much. This would be like too many red pills at once.
Wait, I own nothing. Am I happy? Wait, I was happy?
Well, I want to show you this from the Monk debates. This happened November 30th of last year. And they're talking about the Canadian... they're talking about the news service and the media, and this is pretty interesting, and I want to get your comment on it.
Your Prime Minister decided in advance that these people were, what did he do? All the modern excommunications. They were Nazis, they were white supremacists, they were anti-Semites, they were probably...
So they're talking about the truckers and how they were covered in the press in Canada, and he's talking about Justin Trudeau calling them all those names.
Homophobes, they were misogynists, they were probably transphobes, etc., etc., etc. He did all the things you do in the modern political age if you want to just defenestrate somebody who's awkward to you. And then he brings in the Emergency Powers Act. Now, at such a time, what would the mainstream media do? It would question it. It would question it. The Canadian mainstream media did not. The Canadian mainstream media acted as an amen chorus of the Canadian government. I will give you a couple of examples, but ladies and gentlemen, I could go on for hours with examples of this. You had a CBC host describing the Freedom Convoy as a, quote, feral mob. You had a Toronto Star columnist saying, quote, sorry for the language, It's a homegrown hate farm that was then jet-fueled by an American right-funded rat-fucking operation. Jesus, they can't even write at these papers anymore. CBC said that 2 Indigenous women who were so scared to go outside in Ottawa because of racist violence didn't bother to mention that Indigenous drummers had led the truckers in an O Canada rendition. The National Observer said that the many black and Indigenous Freedom Convoy supporters were in fact duped by the truckers. The Globe and Mail reporter said, my 13-year-old son told me to tell protesters I'm not a Jew out of fear of anti-Semitic violence, without mentioning that one of the leaders of the convoy was himself Jewish. Now, why is this so rancid? Utterly, utterly rancid and corrupt. Because in this country, your media, your mainstream media, is funded by the government.
I like that, man.
So is that the problem? The idea that the government, so now we have the PBS here in America and NPR, which are garbage.
Bill Gates is our Trudeau government.
Bill Gates basically funds a lot of that, and then they get a lot more of their money from banks and polluters and the oil companies and stuff like that. And then they also get money from the government. So they get the worst of both worlds here in America. How does it work in Canada?
In Canada, I'm trying to think of like the advertising, the state-funded ones, CBC and Radio Canada. They don't need to worry about advertising. They get $1.2 billion between the two of them. It's a combination of both. They are by the way, they're not just collaborators; they are orchestrators. When I was down at the protest, first of all, just to confirm what some of that gentleman said, I don't know what his name is.
I think it's.
I met a trans protester there. I interviewed the trans protester. Their name was Ari, and they did not suffer any hatred or verbal abuse until they crossed the line from the counter protesters to the protesters. And you should have seen the counter protesters turn on the transgender Ari like that person had just killed a puppy.
Like they were Jon Stewart questioning the Wuhan bat soup theory.
No, it was outrageous. I mean, first of all, I happen to be Jewish myself. There was not the slightest bit of anti-Semitism there. I interviewed black protesters. I interviewed his name was Big Bull, a native man from Alberta who was doing the ceremony in the park. And then just to get back to the whole confession through projection, Justin Trudeau and his government are the actual racists. Oh, you minorities, you got duped. You're not able to think for yourself. You need Daddy Trudeau and the Daddy Trudeau government to tell you you're wrong. You don't know why you're wrong. It's okay. They will forgive you. It's I'd say the problem is the same, but what that guy said is 1,000% accurate.
Douglas Murray is his name.
Why would you see Malcolm Gladwell?
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell, who just wrecked his reputation with that month
That was
debate.
the tipping point to nobody listening to Malcolm Gladwell anymore.
I mean, Malcolm Gladwell was already exposed as a shill for the tobacco industry, and
yeah, they do a great job in the media.
They do a great job.
Oh, wait, hold up. That's the same one when Malcolm Gladwell was telling Taibbi that
he's a racist.
Okay, I saw that portion. I didn't see the whole...
he told Taibbi he's a racist on that?
He kept saying that he's a white male who likes these, kept calling him whitey, and white guys like to...
Malcolm Gladwell
was saying that about Taibbi, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I don't know why. I think I would have remembered that speech if I had heard it, but I saw Malcolm Gladwell was like, oh, you want it to be like Walter Cronkite because you like it when old white men are in charge. I was like, it was...
How did you get anywhere in life, Malcolm Gladwell?
I have no idea.
Did you run that by your old white dad when you?
So yeah, Matt Taibbi and Douglas Murray were saying how journalism was better, and they talked about Walter Cronkite, and then he says, "Oh yeah, you like Walter Cronkite because you like it when white male men."
That's deliberately vile of Malcolm Gladwell because he's the big knowing, he's the big knowing the inside story that you wouldn't have thought of guy.
He was defending corporate news media. That was the thing he was doing there.
Nice to him.
But he could have done it in an intellectually honest manner.
That's right.
If you're debating and someone has to take up the devil's advocate, be the devil's, what is it called? The devil's advocate. There's a way to do it without... No,
he's devil's PR is what he was.
Yeah. If you want to see my stand-up special, become a member at jimmydore.com. It's only $10, and come see our live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, St. Paul, Honolulu, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, Cohoes, New York, Hartford, and more.